Looks like it's live. Let's take a listen, everyone. It's happening.
That I'm a conservative. After all, I come from a state that doesn't have a whole lot of history of conservatism and certainly not republicanism. Well, a lot of it is that, as you know, I get asked all these God questions in the debates. And I guess in a way it's appropriate because my conservatism is rooted in my understanding of the Scriptures. And here's why. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 verse 2 says that a wise man's heart directs him toward the right, but a foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. There you have it. Let me explain some things about the way I grew up in South Arkansas, where there were no Republicans native to Hempstead County. I came from the little town of Hope. I know you've heard of it before. And yes, there was another obscure, unknown governor who couldn't win the presidency who came from Hope, Arkansas, too. But as I've often said, give us one more chance, folks. I was in an airplane, and a guy sitting next to me several months ago was, I think, just trying to stir up some conversation. So he turned to me and he said, "Hey, mister, I got a joke I want to tell you. It's about this politician from Hope, Arkansas." I said, "Excuse me, sir, but now I need to let you know something before you embarrass yourself. I am a politician from Hope, Arkansas." He looked over at me. He said, "Oh, that's all right, son. I'll tell it real slow." When I grew up, I came from a family where there were three basic heroes in our household: Jesus, Elvis, and FDR. Like so many kids of the South, it was sort of just inbred in us that we were all Democrats. Now, it wasn't because folks there were so much liberal, but there was just this sort of gravitation toward it. In fact, there were only 7 Republicans that I knew of in my entire home county. Every one of them had moved in from either Kentucky, Indiana, or Illinois. None of them were native to Hempstead County. There used to be a saying that there are no Republicans here except the ones that either moved in or have been messed with. Well, I was one of those guys that at some point got messed with. And here's what happened. As a teenager, I went to work for a gentleman by the name of Haskell Jones. He was the manager of the local radio station, and he gave me a job. I look back and I think, what an incredible thing. Here's a guy that looked at a 14-year-old kid and saw something in him and said, "I want you to work for me." And he was one of those 7 Republicans who had moved in from somewhere. He loved this country. He was a great patriot. He understood the blessings of America. And even though I had not grown up in a Republican household, I understood something about the blessings of America. I was raised to love this country. I was not allowed to be unkind toward it. My parents, though they were not well educated, just hard-working, blue-collar types that barely could make the rent payments on the little rent house we lived in on 2nd Street in Hope, Arkansas. A father that worked 2 jobs, one as a fireman, the other as a mechanic. The kind of dad who got grit and grime under his fingernails every single day because he did the work of heavy lifting and hard labor. Kind of household where the only soap we had in our house was lava soap. That means I was in college before I found out it's not supposed to hurt when you take a shower. My father never graduated high school. In fact, no male upstream from me in my entire family lineage had ever graduated high school. I would be the first, and the first to ever go into college. My mother was the oldest of 7 children and grew up in a household where her early childhood was spent with dirt floors, no electricity, outdoor toilets. I'm a generation away from the abject poverty that plagued so many people of the Deep South who went through the Great Depression and a World War, but a part of what we often call the greatest generation because they did not live for their own comforts. They lived so their children would have a better life than them. And that's why many of us live better today than we ever could have dreamed. And because of what they and others like them in their generation instilled in me, I grew up believing that no matter where you started in this country, it wasn't where you had to stop. And that was the greatness of America, is that we had individual freedom. that our freedom was not tied to the group to which we were automatically or arbitrarily connected. Our freedom was tied to our own individual souls. It was a gift from God, not our government. And therefore, no one could take it from us because no one gave it to us. It was instilled in me that because freedom is individual, personal responsibility is also individual and was upon me. And that I could not expect somebody or the government to do for me what I was supposed to do for myself. When I went to work for Haskell Jones, this great patriot and Republican, he began to help me crystallize what I understood was part of a greater movement. This was in the 1960s. In 1968, 1969, when this country was literally burning with riots and dissent. And we remember the Democratic National Convention when the whole world was watching, and they were. And there was a real definite choice that year. A choice: would we be a country of law and order or a law of mayhem? And that further helped crystallize my view that I believed in law and order, not mayhem. I believed that some things were right and some things were wrong. And when we went with the right, we had strength. And when we saw that there was no moral center and there was nothing that really ever could be defined as a moral absolute, then we were lost and confused. I also was handed a book by Haskell Jones when I was a teenager. It was a book that was called It's a Choice, Not an Echo, written by Phyllis Schlafly. And that book had a tremendous impact on me as a teenager. Quite frankly, that book reminded me that in all of our lives, we should not simply be echoing the sentiments of others, but making deep personal choices about what we believe, and most importantly, why we believe it. I realize that it is not politically correct to say what I'm about to say, but I've believed it since I was a teenager, and I will not recant it now. The reason that America is a great nation is because America is a special nation, and the reason America is a special nation is because it was founded by people who were first on their knees before they were on their feet. We are a nation rooted in our faith.